Good morning. It is truly a delight to be here with all of you. And the first thing I want to say to you is thank you. Thanks for all your years of service to your students and your communities. I meet lots of teachers, and they tell me that they can't imagine a life better spent, including my mom and dad were classroom teachers. My dad later becoming an administrator in Meade County gave their professional lives to teaching. And so I have a great deal of reverence and respect for the work that you've done, that you continue to do. One of the things I know about teachers is that you often fail at retirement. And I hear that a lot from folks in here, that you keep finding ways to keep giving back. And that's part of who you are, that's part of your soul, that's part of your heart, and it is what makes you such incredible people. I also know that you're extremely passionate. And so I heard some about the kerfuffle this morning around coffee and breakfast. And I just thought, these people don't realize that these are teachers that they're messing with here. These people will turn over cars and set trash cans on fire. Like this will get out of hand. You need to give these people coffee, or we're going to have a problem. As you have heard, I come from a family of educators. My mom and dad, I mentioned, were educators in the Meade County system. My grandmother was a teacher in a little place called Summershade in Metcalfe County. And I was told by Carolyn Edwards to be sure and emphasize the Metcalfe County roots. So I spent my summers running around in the fields and playing in Metcalfe County. So wonderful community as well. I wanted to talk to you about my agenda. And a lot has been said about my agenda and where that agenda comes from. And so I'll tell you what it is. So get out your tweeters or however it is you need to do that. My agenda is based on what Kentuckians told us they wanted for the future of their schools and what they wanted for their children. When I became commissioner in 2014, we spent about 6 months listening to Kentuckians in every way that we could. We gathered information in a variety of different sources, including town hall forums that we had students facilitate. And we used a technique that we called empathy interviewing, which is where you just ask questions about people's experiences. So we didn't ask them, what do you think we should do with the teaching profession, or what do you think about the teaching profession? We asked them to tell us a story about a great teacher that they had in their life. We didn't ask them what they thought about instruction or curriculum. We asked them about a time that they learned something meaningful in their life and to tell us about that. So we gathered all of that information. We had just thousands of interviews effectively and pages of data. And then we asked a group of Kentuckians to analyze that. We pulled together about 60 Kentuckians from around the state. We tapped certain people on the shoulder and said, we think you need to be involved. So that was about a third of the group. We opened up an application process and asked any Kentuckian who was interested in taking part also to come in and analyze that data. And then we looked at who was represented and who wasn't. And we wanted to make sure that voices and perspectives and individuals who hadn't always been at the table when education decisions were made had a seat at the table. So we made sure that that group was representative and that it really looked like Kentucky's communities and Kentucky citizens. So that's who did the analysis of all of that data. So when we took the time to listen to Kentuckians about what our agenda should be, here's what they told us. They told us that they wanted better, deep, rich, and meaningful experiences for their students. They wanted experiences that would prepare their students for the fast-moving world that's already here, that's just getting faster. And we can think about the changes that have come just in the past couple of years around artificial intelligence and how commerce moves instantly around the world, and how information is instantly available to us. And that in itself is enough motivation for why education needs to adapt and be different. And we should be working on trying to give our students experiences that prepare them for that fast-moving world. So that's what Kentuckians told us they wanted. That was foundational. Profoundly change the experiences of our students. And I'm excited about that as an agenda because finally I think it puts the emphasis at the right point when it comes to what we do in terms of education policy. Imagine an education agenda built going forward that puts first the experience of the student and asks how can we make that meaningful, rich, and give the student the tools that they need to be successful workers, citizens, community members, and happy, successful human beings. That to me is a beautiful starting point, and it is what Kentuckians told us they wanted. A second thing that they told us they wanted was they wanted innovation. They wanted change at scale in Kentucky. They wanted us to do something big. A lot of Kentuckians remembered the efforts around KRTA and what the spirit was behind that. And they wanted Kentucky to do something at that breadth and scale again. Excuse me. Particularly, they told us that they wanted innovation in the areas of assessment and accountability, because there was a real sense that our system of tests and measures and the way we rate and evaluate schools, that was a limitation and a barrier on the kinds of deep learning that they told us they wanted for their students. That if we were focused just on the things that could be measured on tests and rating schools based on those tests, that we were really limiting the experiences that students could have. So they wanted change in those areas in particular. And they wanted the community's voices involved in what we measure and how we evaluate schools. Our systems of accountability, or how we rate and evaluate schools, are largely driven by what federal law has prescribed. So it came from Washington or from the U.S. Department of Education, or it came from, in some cases, Frankfurt, what policymakers in the legislature have decided years ago. But it doesn't take into account a lot of the things that you're really proud of about your community schools. They may have a great set of extracurricular experiences available for students. They may have great career technical options for students. They may do a great job keeping students in school. And those things aren't reflected well in our systems of accountability and assessment. So Kentuckians told us they wanted those kinds of changes as well. And then finally, Kentuckians told us that they wanted real connection and collaboration with community. Again, it was that sense that a lot of decisions when it comes to education are made by people that look like me and have the same gender as me, with positions of power, and a lot of voices in communities weren't at the table and or haven't been at the table when decisions are made, and that needed to change. So include Kentuckians going forward. So what we've done in those three areas, first around deep experiences for students, we've used a significant portion of our COVID relief dollars in trying to think about how we can bring school back better than it was before. We've invested in supports and professional learning options for our teachers, some around foundational literacy. We know that that's an area of improvement for Kentucky, but a lot around problem and project-based learning and tasks for students, supporting our teachers in making those shifts that can bring about those deep, rich, meaningful, authentic experiences for students. Opportunities where they get to engage not just with content, but they also get the chance to demonstrate the ability to stand and deliver a presentation, to communicate effectively, to present, to collaborate, to solve a complex problem, perhaps a problem that doesn't have an easy or even a right answer, where you have to make hard choices. The chance to be creative, the chance to work with others. Those are the kinds of things that lead to success in life. Yes, you need foundational literacy and numeracy. We know that. And you need to know science concepts and basic facts of history. But we know that's not enough. And it hasn't really been enough for some time. So those kinds of changes are what we're working to bring about with the efforts that we're leading at the Kentucky Department of Education. So if you want to know what my agenda is, it starts with the experience of the student. And then it goes into innovation, particularly around assessments and accountability. And we've asked districts across the state, and there are about 30 of them now, that are engaged in a project that we call our local laboratories of learning, where we've asked them to design new and different assessment and accountability systems, and we connect them to each other so that we can design something profoundly new and different for Kentucky, and bring that forward, and then take it to our legislature and take it to the U.S. Department of Education and say, we're not asking for you to take a risk on us. We want to bring you something that really gets at measurements of some of those deeper concepts, and that involves the voices and perspectives and values of communities in accountability systems. So that is what we're working on too. And we've worked to really involve Kentuckians going forward in decisions. With this entire effort that we've called United We Learn, United We Learn has a United We Learn Council that advises the state board and advises me on what next steps we need to take to continue this effort going forward. It is a broad and diverse group, again, made up of people all across the state of Kentucky, and we looked at it once we got applications and we asked certain people to be involved. We said, who's not represented, whose voice is not here? And then we went out and found people to represent those voices. So that value is deeply embedded in the work that we have going forward. I want to say just a couple of other things, and then I'd love to hear from you, your perspectives on things, your questions, any feedback from me that you may have. So we'll spend the rest of our time just having a conversation. But I saw an old friend, Vivian Carter, for the first time in many years here. And Vivian is an educator in Hazard. And she reminded me that I had her son in class, and I told her, when you see Kenton, apologize to him for me, because I was a young teacher and I had a lot to learn. And I got better. And I became a better human being, I became a better educator, and I think that's something, that's an experience that has served me well in life. We've all got things to learn, and we can all get better. And another thing that I want to tell you about is my grandpa Joe from Metcalfe County. My grandpa Joe, his real name was Willard Willis Howell. And I don't know how he got to Joe, but he did. He was a tobacco farmer in Metcalfe County, and I can remember that him working in that red dirt in Metcalfe County, and I can remember the size of his forearms. Were just, for me as a kid, they were gigantic. These big, powerful arms that he had as a farmer, and his hands were thick and calloused and just like leather. So those are some of the things I remember about my grandpa Joe. But I also think about the change that happened in his life. My grandpa Joe, his family came from Oklahoma and actually migrated from Oklahoma to Kentucky in a covered wagon in the early 1900s. And the wagon broke down along the way, and they got stuck and had to wait for a month to send a message to family in Kentucky that they needed money and help, and then people to make the journey into Arkansas to get them. So that was kind of the early formative experiences of his life, was making that journey and then settling in Metcalfe County as a farmer. And he started his career plowing that red dirt in Metcalfe County behind a mule. And by the end of his life, Joe Wilson Howell was driving his Chevrolet pickup truck on an interstate highway system. So that's the change that happened in one lifetime. So we've got some young people here, and a lot of you may be working and substituting and supporting preschools in your communities. You may be working with 3- and 4-year-olds. Imagine the change that is going to take place in their life. And we have to think about what those changes are going to look like, and how can we change the education system so that we prepare those children for that future. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my agenda. That's what I'm excited about working on.